Hello and welcome to Friday Nights at the Big Cat Cafe. I'm Elizabeth Ellen Carter.
And I'm Duncan Carling-Rodgers. Tonight we're going to be talking about books that have been adapted into movies or TV series.
There's quite a few of them. Some ones that come off the top of my head is Claudius, Gone with the Wind. You've got a couple of particular favourites, haven't you?
A couple of books that were adapted into movies that we will actually be talking about tonight are Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Of course, that was turned into the film Blade Runner.
That's correct. Also Death Wish, which was turned into a movie called Death Wish. And, wow, yes. How imaginative. And Jack's Return Home, that was turned into what has become a cult classic in British cinema called Get Carter. No relation to the version made more recently starring
Sylvester Stallone.
Which was a dog.
No one can compare to Michael Caine.
Michael Caine, you'll never guess what his name was.
No, you'll have to give me a clue.
Maurice Micklewhite. Imagine that.
Michael. Where did the cane come from?
I've no idea. I've no idea where the Micklewhite came from. He is a London boy, and maybe it's Old English or something like that.
Norma Jean Baker. Everyone knows her as Marilyn Monroe.
That's correct. John Wayne. His birth name was Marion Morrison. Who'd have thought that one of the greatest tough guys of movies ever had a girl's name?
Well, he could have been a boy named Sue.
Indeed. And speaking of Death Wish, the movie of which starred Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson's name, his birth name was Charles Bukinski. So there you go. You've actually been rereading I, Claudius just recently, haven't you?
I have. I'm probably about a third of the way in. I'm really enjoying it. I read it about 20 years ago, but I'm looking at writing a novel set in ancient Rome. So I thought, to get the flavour, I'll go back and reread I, Claudius.
Right. What's the title going to be of your Roman novel?
At this stage, Dark Heart.
Right.
But that may be subject to change.
We did, in fact, spend a recent long weekend watching the BBC adaptation of I, Claudius.
Oh yeah, we
again.
binge watched.
We did the Netflix thing and watched the entire 12-episode mini-series. I suppose
13 hours.
Yep, 13 hours. There were significant differences, weren't there, between the book and the BBC adaptation?
Well, considering that the book in the paperback format that I've got it in is getting close to 1,000 pages, it's just
that's not just I, Claudius, though, is it?
No, you're right. There's Claudius the God, which is the sequel to I, Claudius.
Right. Okay.
Which looks at his reign as the accidental emperor of Rome. So you can't expect the miniseries to be so deliberately faithful. There was one passage that they missed out early on, and that was about the woman who would have been Claudius's first wife, and it was a little tragic love story. One sees the hand of Livia, of Claudius's step-grandmother in all of this. She was a notorious poisoner, and because she had somebody else in mind for Claudius to marry, poisoned the young girl on her wedding day.
At the wedding or on the way, or what?
On the way to the wedding. Horrendous woman.
In the case of Blade Runner, which was adapted from, which was a 1982 movie adapted from Philip K. Dick's 1968 novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, there are significant differences between Blade Runner and the source material. And there is a story about how somebody was interviewing Dick and said, "Mr. Dick, what do you think of what they've done to your book?" And Philip K. Dick is reported to have simply laughed and turned around and pointed at a copy of the novel sitting on a bookshelf in the room and said, they haven't done anything to my book. My book's still there.
But not every author has had the same sang-froid. I remember you telling me the story about Death Wish.
Brian Garfield is the author of Death Wish, which was published in 1972. The movie was made just 2 years later. Charles Bronson plays a man who becomes a vigilante after his wife is murdered and his daughter is sexually assaulted during a home invasion. The author, Brian Garfield, was very upset by what they did to his book. Indeed, he had less sang-froid than Philip K. Dick as a result of the changes that director Michael Winner made to his story. He in fact came up with a sequel novel a few years later, in which he attempted to set the record straight. The differences were that Garfield wanted his novel to be anti-violence, whereas Michael Winner was much more neutral about it, and in fact made the novel almost pro-violence. Here's an interesting casting choice. The character of the vigilante in Death Wish was originally going to go to Jack Lemmon.
Oh.
Now, I really very, very much doubt that it would have gone on to be this increasingly stupid series of films if Jack Lemmon had originally played the character of Paul Kersey. But
I could see him do it.
But I can really see that too.
Yeah.
I believe that would likely have been as striking a film as Falling Down with Michael Douglas. Anyway, now we come to Jack's Return Home by Ted Lewis, which was turned into the film Get Carter, starring Michael Caine. Interestingly, both this and Death Wish are about vengeance. In Jack's Return Home, an enforcer for the London mob goes on a rampage of revenge in the north of England after finding his law-abiding brother was murdered to stop him from exposing that his daughter, Jack's niece, had been forced to take part in pornographic movies by local criminals. The book and film also highlight how siblings can end up on different sides of the law.
It's interesting because, of course, that always reminds me of Angels with Dirty Faces.
Indeed, they're brothers in that, aren't they?
No, I think they're childhood friends.
They're childhood friends.
Yeah.
Pat O'Brien and James Cagney.
I love Jimmy Cagney.
Oh, absolutely brilliant. Now, Get Carter was directed by a guy by the name of Mike Hodges, who also wrote the screenplay from Ted Lewis's book, and he embellished the central character somewhat, did Hodges, made him more talky and violent. Michael Caine apparently wound that back, made the character more economical again. Caine's actually thought of as the uncredited co-producer of the film.
Can we stop and pay a little tribute to Michael Caine?
We certainly can. How about this? If you think that's madness, you should you should be aware that a copy of the first edition hardback of Jack's Return Home by Ted Lewis now asks $500.
Whoa!
The paperback editions sell for between $18 and $180 on Amazon. The film tie-in edition was titled Carter, not Get Carter, but Carter. They must have still been making their minds up about what the title was. Apparently, all of the references to the film on the back cover call the film Carter. That's actually the edition that I read. It was purchased by my brother.
And I should point out, no relation to me.
No, indeed not. Jack's Return Home was out of print for many years. It slipped into obscurity until the 1990s. It was republished in paperback under the title of Get Carter in 1993. Of course, Michael Caine playing Jack Carter was something against type, wasn't it? Because he was playing nice guys up till then.
Well, yeah, Zulu, Battle of Britain. Alfie wasn't terribly nice, though.
Yeah, I don't know whether you'd call him an anti-hero. He was somewhat ambivalent in Alfie. Of course, that was another book adapted into a film. The book was by a chap by the name of Bill Norton.
Lovable Rogues, he did very well. I mean, the Italian Job. What's not to love about that film?
Indeed, and also before Get Carter was The Ipcress File, which was a spy film made in 1965 from Len Deighton's novel written in 1962. Yeah, great actor, Michael Caine.
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Well, that about wraps it up for another week.
It is. I'd like to say, come and join me on my blog. Elizabeth Ellen Carter is at eecarter.com. A bit of a plug for myself. Warriors Surrender, my medieval romance, comes out on the 7th of November. And on the 28th of November, a free short story anthology with Suzanne Bellamy, Eva Scott and Noel Clarke called A Season to Remember. Thank you very much for joining us. We'd love to see you here next week. If you've got any comments about the show or anything you'd like us to cover, write a message in the post below, or send me a message via eecarter.com.
Thanks very much. Good night.
Good night.
I think we got it there, don't you?